Hey guys, it's Bree here at Blossom and Branch Farm. Today I am burning down my garden. Just kidding, I'm not really. But I am definitely burning something, not my garden, but my wood in my garden. And you might have seen us do this before when we built our wooden seed trays out of scrap wood and we burned them in the Japanese Shou Sugi Ban method, where we char the outside layer of the wood and then we even sealed it with a little linseed oil and beeswax. That waterproofed that wood. That wood still looks brand new. Water beads right off of it. And so where is this helpful in the garden? Well, if you're like me and you're trying to avoid a lot of plastic and consumerism in the garden, scrap wood can be a great way to expand your garden. Behind me, you'll see one of my favorite parts of my garden, which is this wood slice pathway. Now, I built this wood slice pathway 3 years ago, and I did it mostly because we didn't have a ton of extra money to be doing things like putting in stone pathways, cobblestones, or those kinds of things, but I wanted something semi-permanent. Now, obviously, these wood slices are going to break down eventually. That to me is a pro, because then I don't have to worry about the environmental footprint of whatever material I'm using. I already had wood slices. We had to take down a couple big invasive elm trees out in the woods, so we just sliced these pieces into nice thick coins. I dug down the pathway, compacted it, laid down a base of sand, and then I put the wood slices down and into place. Then I went ahead and I filled it in between the gaps with some pea gravel. This is also called decomposed granite. Are they breaking down? Yes. Do I still love the way it looks after 3 years? Yes. So is this a project for you if you want something totally 100% permanent? Probably not. If you're okay with a little bit of upkeep and free, this might be a good project for you. So what I'm doing today and why I have my torch out is that I'm actually getting ready to reseal these. So when I first installed it, I did seal it with a coat of linseed oil and beeswax. And what that did was it just gave a little bit of extra protection from the elements. Well, now after year 3, that has pretty much all absorbed into the wood. So I'm gonna try my Shou Sugi Ban method with my torch and torch these slices. So a couple things to be mindful of. Obviously, we're working with fire and propane, so be very careful. The other one is please don't do this on a windy day. You wouldn't want a piece of ember or something to take off and start a fire. And the other thing is I would recommend wetting down anything you don't want catching on fire before you do this. Now, these wood slices are set into gravel, and then I went ahead and wet down all along the edges anywhere that I have mulch. I'm not planning on torching those areas, but just in case. I also have water close by, a hose, and a bucket, so just 2 things to bear in mind. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and hit this lightly with my torch. We're gonna see how it looks, and then I'm going to show you if you are a wooden raised bed aficionado, if you like to grow in wood beds instead of spending a lot of money on some of the more expensive raised beds, and you want them to last a long time like those more expensive beds, I'm going to show you how you can also treat your raised beds with this method. All right, let's burn down this pathway. I'm using a full-size propane tank for this because the little torches take a long time. All right, so I just finished torching that. It took about half an hour to do all of it. I find that if you hold it on there just for a few seconds until it starts to blacken and then move along, that's plenty of time. Now, if you're doing this like I am, this is really a bad time of year to be doing this. I should have done this in winter when the plants were dormant, because you have to be really careful otherwise that you're not burning your plants, because you will kill them. You can use a torch weeder like this to hit weeds with and kill them that way. So of course, excess heat like that will burn your plants, but even though we had some growing along, I just made sure I angled it away from those plants as I was burning. So now that we've got this path, we could oil it. I'm going to not oil this one. I could do linseed, but I am going to oil our next project that I'm going to show you, which is our cedar garden beds. So let's go talk about how we're going to do that. All right, so I've got my cedar raised bed behind me now. This is actually a raised bed that we had in the garden already for the last 3 years. So all this talk about how quickly it wood breaks down in the garden, if you're using the right wood, it actually is going to hold up for you quite well for quite a while, especially with this treatment that we're going to do. So like I said, this bed was not treated previously. This was just raw cedar. Now I did do a linseed and beeswax oil treatment on it in its first year, but I haven't done anything since then. And you'll see here what we actually, I still have a little piece of plastic over here because we did used to line our beds with plastic just to help protect the woods, but you can see what happens is it gets so brittle over time and it just breaks down into little microplastics inside your beds. So I don't recommend doing that anymore. Now that being said, I am going to treat the inside and the outside of these beds so that they're waterproof from both sides. If you already have your raised beds and they're already existing, I don't know that I would do this, because if we waterproof just the outside but the inside isn't waterproofed, what's going to happen is you just keep water from being able to evaporate out the sides, if that makes sense. So if your beds are already existing, I would just treat them maybe with a coat of linseed oil, but if you're building new beds or new seed starting boxes or using wood in really any other way in the garden, I would recommend doing this Shou Sugi Ban method. So I'm going to go ahead and fire up my torch again. I'm going to hit this cedar lightly once with the torch, just like I did with my pathways, and keep my water handy and close by just in case of any flare-ups. I'm also doing this in rocks, and that helps so that there's not a lot to catch on fire in case we get an errant ember blowing. All right, let's go. All right, so now that I've got a char on this bed, I'm gonna go along and I'm gonna brush a coat of linseed oil on it. So what the linseed oil does is it kind of seals everything up. It's not absolutely necessary, you don't have to do this, but it provides a little bit of added protection. So we're gonna do that, and then we're good to go and fill this up, and it's going to last a lot longer. So a lot of times I hear this on advertisements and various things for these metal beds, is that the metal beds are more sustainable than a wood bed. Not really, because there's so much, when we're looking at sustainability, the manufacture of steel in particular is really pretty bad in terms of the things that go into it, in terms of the fossil fuel used, the shipping on those, which usually they're being shipped across oceans to get here, versus wood. Again, I often hear this, well, these wood structures in your garden are temporary, they're not gonna last. And while that can be true, I don't know how long these beds can last. Now, according to the Japanese Shou Sugi Ban style, this is going to waterproof these for a really long time. And the seed trays that we've been using this season have definitely shown that zero breakdown after sitting with wet soil in them for months. They're still totally waterproof. So wood is a renewable resource. Wood, yes, it's cutting down trees, but typically these are coming from lumber yards where they are planting lumber that is specifically meant to be harvested, and it's a continual cycle. So it's kind of like when we're talking about buying live Christmas trees, right? Buying live Christmas trees is still more sustainable because they're constantly replanting them, and as they're growing, they're actually sequestering carbon. Whereas the steel manufacture process doesn't sequester carbon at any process, at any step along the way. Wood lumber harvest does sequester carbon during the growing process. Then of course there's the cutting and milling, and then they replant those trees and they can sequester more carbon. So in my garden, I really prefer the wood. I also don't have to worry about the weird ingredients that might be in any of these beds or any of the leaching that might happen, or leaching from plastic. So Shou Sugi Ban, burning your garden, can be a really great way to help those wood products last a little bit longer. All right guys, that's it for me today. I have 1,000,002 things to do around here, so I'm gonna hop to it. I hope you enjoyed this video and you learned something. If you did, remember to like, subscribe, tell your friends, burn the things, and let me know how it goes. See you guys around here next time at the farm.